Gears of War 3, the last game of the original trilogy, which my stream community admirably calls Coggers of the Third. For many players, Gears 3 is the best game of the series. Great movement, amazing character design, and a compelling storyline as well. And as wrong as those people are, none of that matters when it comes to speedruns. If you saw the first two videos in this mini-series, you're probably expecting me to tell you about all the tricks, skips, and out-of-bounds glitches that fill the Gears 3 campaign, but instead, I'm actually going to tell you why speedrunners hate Gears 3. First of all, the game is just too long. It's the longest game of the old trilogy, clocking in at a little over 3 hours for a full run. This is normally a good thing for casual playthroughs because, hey, it's more content to go through, but this makes speedruns a much bigger waste of time than they already are, especially if you need to reset toward the end of a good one. It wouldn't be so bad though if the whole run up until then were packed with amazing strategies and fun gameplay. Unfortunately, that's just not the case. In Gears 3, there are a lot of autoscrollers. You know, those things like sitting in an elevator or hot air balloon while slowly drifting to your final destination with no real way to make it faster? Yeah, those. But wait, how bad could it really be? Gears 1 and 2 have some autoscrollers too. Well, the other day I actually timed it to find out. In Gears 3, there's a solid 40 minutes of what could be considered an autoscroller. The crazy part is that this doesn't include the many sections of the game where you're just running forward in some desolate wasteland, waiting around for dialogue to finish, or hanging out before the next wave of enemies spawns in. In fact, if you were to total all of these sources of delay, I'd venture to say that out of the entire 3-hour run, over a third of it is dead time doing nothing. Compared to the stats in Gears 1 and 2, Gears 3 is clearly the worst offender. So what fills the rest of the time? The out-of-bounds techniques from the other games don't really work anymore, so there's no cool tech or glitches to keep us entertained. Unfortunately, Gears 3 is built pretty well, so weird collisions and missing walls are harder to come by and harder to abuse if found. After concussive smoke grenades in Gears 2 led to countless knockdown exploits, the developers learned their lesson for the future games. So of course smoke grenades aren't in the Gears 3 campaign, but not even mortar launchers can knock players down anymore. The best protection against players ragdolling into an unexpected area is to not let it happen in the first place. In that same vein is the fact that we can't jump over boom shields anymore. Being able to arbitrarily jump in a game that isn't designed for it would have opened up the floodgates for some insane skips, but just like the knockdown mechanic, they simply got rid of it. So does that mean all hope is lost? Yeah, kinda. Whenever there's a situation where we can do some funny business, there's always a kill barrier there to prevent any further shenanigans. There's nowhere that shows much promise for new developments other than this section in Act 3. When you spawn into the level, there are a couple trucks behind you to block the way in which you arrived in the cutscene. If you go up to a certain load zone and then backtrack to the spawn, the trucks actually deload, letting you simply walk out. There's plenty of space to explore back here, and even a few places to fall down through the map, but unfortunately none of this is currently helpful in a speedrun. And that's all we got. Seriously. The simplified toolset we've been given affects the regular gameplay of speedruns as well. Even just running from point A to B is noticeably more boring than before. In the Gears 1 campaign, there's actually a hidden stamina bar, meaning you have to carefully time dodge rolls while roadie running to protect from getting tired out too quickly. In Gears 2, you have to constantly dodge roll at a certain rhythm to keep a faster pace than just running alone. In Gears 3, you just run fast forever while holding A. Now that might be great and satisfying for multiplayer, but in a campaign speedrun, it lowers the skill and player engagement while moving between fights. Speaking of fights, a lot of the clears in this game are just frustrating as the player. There are numerous places where waves of mandatory enemies are bottlenecked for no real reason other than to show off how cool the enemies are. Savage drones pop out of the ground one by one, but die more quickly than they appear. The mini corpsers burrow into the ground for dozens of seconds worth of invincibility if you happen to not kill them when they last resurfaced, and Therons slowly rappel down in single file from barges that are too high in the air to retaliate against. The annoyances are honestly endless. In addition to the slow spawn rate, many of the fights also suffer from spawns that are physically very spread out. Routing these parts is frustrating and unreliable, and this is often the case in the larger combats where enemies are already prone to running in any number of directions. It's almost impossible to react to everything that can happen in these wild scuffles, and one small mishap can quickly spiral into disaster. Putting aside enemy spawn issues, the enemies themselves are just annoying to fight too. Therons have some pretty devious AI. They're extremely eager to chainsaw the player, which makes several optional fights kinda mandatory to get through safely. They also love to sneak and hide around corners way more than other Locusts. This means they can waste your time while you look for them, or slip in that chainsaw they always wanted. Shriekers are basically flying tickers with guns. Their erratic behavior makes them quite a nuisance when mixed in with other mobs and can ruin what would otherwise be a good line. And of course, we can't talk about frustration without talking about drudges, lambent abominations that can mutate into different forms after taking enough damage. While they shapeshift, the transformation itself grants these enemies iframes, and the 3 different variants are also slower to take down than the original base form. The thing that makes them even worse is that some of them are scripted to mutate no matter what happens to them, wasting the player's time. With certain weapons, we can actually insta-kill them to skip their transformations, but sadly, those weapons aren't always available. Oh, also, the one-shot doesn't actually kill the Lambent Berserker in one shot. It's kinda bullshit. Now, I'll admit, there are some good fights in this game, but it never feels like you're truly flowing. The amount of satisfying clears is just too limited. With all the previous points together, there's always something to hold us up. The point of speedrunning is to go fast after all, right? But it's very possible to go too fast in this game. Most lambent enemies spawn from the glowing pods that appear on stalks. You can shoot down the pods to stop the spawns. There are at least a couple places in the campaign where if you destroy the pods too quickly, the mission softlocks and you won't be able to progress again until you reset the checkpoint, thus wasting more time. Even if you let everything spawn like it's supposed to, it's also possible to kill these enemies too quickly and end up with a softer lock. In these cases, it takes the game an extra minute or two to realize that you're done with the section before letting you actually move on. However, through the same means, you can still also achieve a real soft lock where everything is dead but you're stuck until you redo the fight. In almost every area with combat, you have to completely clear all of the enemies leading up to transition points like doors or fences before being able to access them. With how slowly enemies can spawn into some fights, it's dangerously easy to blast past something that entrenches itself in a remote corner of the map, causing a time-wasting game of hide and seek. To make matters even worse, at any given point one of those mandatory enemies might randomly decide to have a ton of extra health, or even become fully invincible, effectively killing the run by the time you realize. To make this video, I've only been playing Gears 3 again for a few weeks, but I've already had this happen to me twice. To think that this could end a real run at any time just sours my stomach. Gears 3 doesn't have the most engaging fights, nor does it have any flashy skips or techniques, but it still holds a special place on many of our hard drives. Despite that, I don't think I, or anyone else really, is planning to grind this game anytime soon. Yo dudes, I hope you enjoyed this. I know some people are gonna instantly downvote because I said anything remotely negative about Gears 3, but I'm just telling it like it is. I'm not really sure at this point if I'm gonna do anything for J4 and 5, but I might play around with a few other concepts. Let me know if there's something you really want to see from me. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. I'll literally see you, bro. I'm in your walls.